Currently, our program asks the user for input, so the user enters a to-do and the program prints out the to-do. But that's not what we want. What we want is to let the user enter multiple to-dos in the command line. So how can we do that? Well, one way to do that is, of course, to have multiple input functions. So let's try to do that. Let's say text1, or better, let's name this to do one, right, is equal to that. And then to do 2 is equal to input again, user prompt, and let's ask for another to do 3 is equal to input, user prompt. And then what do we print out in here? Well, first let me remove this and execute the program as it is and see what will happen. So we get this message, enter a to-do, we enter clean the bag, meet Tom, throw the trash. So we were asked 3 times to enter to-dos, and each of these strings were stored in its corresponding variable. So now what do we do with these values? Well, we need a type in Python which allows us to store multiple items. So far you saw this type, a string, which is designed for text, and then we have another data type whose syntax is this one in here. So strings start with double quotes and they end with double quotes, and this thing here, which is called a list, a Python list, starts with opening square brackets and it ends with closing square brackets, and inside here you can enter the items. So to do 1, to do 2, to do 3, and then print out to-dos. Run, meet sen, throw trash, clean the bag. And then we get printed out the lists that we assigned in this variable. So to-dos is another variable. We have one variable here, 2, 3, 4, 5 variables in our code. Each variable is associated with its own value. A string here, this variable is associated with the output of the input function, which is again a string. And this variable is associated with a list. Now let me explain what I'm talking about when I say types. So I'm going to print out here, down here, the type of user prompt and execute the script. So enter a to-do, let's keep it short, clean, meet, throw, and this is the list. So this is printed out by this print function, and then we have another output here, class str. So that output is the result of this line. So the type of this value is str, it's a string. If you check the type of to-dos, so here you point the variable and you get the type of the value that the variable is associated with. So to-dos points to a list, therefore we're going to get a list this time. Throw clean meet, and you see it's a list this time. So to-dos is a list. And lastly, let's check to-do 1. To-do 1, what is it? So to-do 1 would be this text here that I enter. Throw. This would be to-do 2, clean, and meet. So str for to-do 1. So both this and the output of the input function are strings. So when the user enters some text here, that text is converted into a string type by the input function. So the input function gets that text, those characters from the command line, and it produces a string in Python. So we don't see that string in the Python script here, because you are not explicitly writing that strings as we do here. That string is implicitly created, and we only see that when we print it out somewhere in the command line. And so type here is a function. You see the syntax type, and it has these round parentheses, and inside we put an argument. So the argument can be anything. So in this case, it's the variable holding that string. The type function is designed to output. So every function outputs something. So this type function is designed to output the type of its argument, which was a string in this case. So to wrap it up in this video, what we did is we created multiple input functions and we stored each of the outputs in a Python list. So a list is needed to store multiple objects. So if you want, you can also add a literal string here and not only variables. So this is a string coming from that variable, but you can also say just hello here and you run it. Clean, throw, meet, and you see hello is also part of that list. Now, of course, the question is this sustainable? So having to write multiple functions for every to-do? Well, the answer is of course not. This is not sustainable. We don't know how many to-dos the user wants to enter. So we need to automate this process. We need to let the user decide how many to-dos they want to enter. And we don't want to write here 200 input functions. So of course there is a way to avoid that. And I'll talk to you about that in the next video. So thanks a lot and keep on learning. See you.